And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Greetings, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska aviation weather outlook for Sunday into Monday. It is Saturday, April 20th, and we'll take a look at things, how they're going to unfold. The main weather features is we've had a strong ridge of high pressure at all levels of the atmosphere over northwest Canada, with a ridge extending westward into the Yukon Valley, into the central interior. This feature is going to continue to hold, but will begin to weaken, maybe not have quite the influence that it once did the middle and latter part of this past week. Meanwhile, low pressure will be spinning up and getting better organized here across the Aleutians, the western half of the Aleutians, and lower southwest quadrant of the Bering Sea. And that feature is going to be there much of the week as it slowly works its way eastward. It will kind of expand in terms of its wind field. So there will be more influences out that way through the Bering and the Aleutians coming up here in the shorter term. A lot of IFR conditions, at least on the map here for Sunday morning. That may be a bit overdone. We've otherwise seen some pretty clear skies in this region as of Saturday morning and early afternoon. There is a little front or push of colder air brushing along the Arctic coast that could have some cloudiness and lower ceilings with it. But at this point, still areas of VFR anticipated. Some IFR, though, back out there along the southwest coast in the Bering. Sunday afternoon, conditions improve. We're looking at VFR to MVFR, maybe a little pocket of IFR on the far eastern end of the Brooks Range near the Alcan border. And then down here off of the Bristol Bay and Kuskokwim Bays in the southeast corner of the Bering, some IFR, as well as back out here along the frontal boundary associated with that low pressure that's going to be sitting out here in the western part of the Berings and the lower Bering Sea and the Aleutians, rather. For Monday morning, we anticipate some pockets of IFR in parts of the Panhandle as a little bit of moisture is creeping northward. Not a whole lot, but enough that could maybe even trigger a light shower or two. Areas along the Brooks Range back toward the North Slope could have some pockets of IFR, as well as down through the lower Yukon, in areas along the southwest coast, and then again back along the frontal boundary out across the central Bering into the central Aleutians. And for Monday afternoon, some pockets of IFR possible across the interior on the south side of the Brooks Range back toward the Seward Peninsula, lower Yukon Delta, but pretty spotty. Same thing, lower Gulf, south of Kodiak Island, and then a broader area as we'd anticipate. This low that's out here is really going to expand its wind field, and with the area of the arcing fronts ahead of it, we expect a broad area of IFR conditions there where there is precipitation, lower ceilings. So in the farther north up there in the east central Brooks Range, could see some IFR conditions around Anatuvik, as well as Adigan Pass in the morning hours, but then giving way to MVFR as the day unfolds. Further southwest, Lake Clark and Merrill should generally start out VFR for Sunday morning, giving way to MVFR conditions. So MVFR conditions may exist south of there, south of Lake Clark, to start out Sunday morning and continue during the day. Rounding up along the Alaska Range, Rainy Pass should generally remain VFR on Sunday, close, so there could be some MVFR conditions just south of Rainy Pass. And then Windy Pass eastward, we expect VFR, Isabel, Mentasta, all the way there through the central eastern Alaska Range. Down across the Copper River Basin, still VFR, and Tanita Pass, VFR conditions. For Portage Pass, starting out VFR, the eastern half of the pass into Prince William Sound will likely become MVFR by Sunday afternoon, but remain VFR there at the west entrance. And Chilkoot and White still holding on to VFR conditions during the day Sunday, though we will start to see those categories come down as we get into Monday. Looking at the surface freezing line that runs out across the central Bering, kind of squiggly because of a couple of weak low pressures, and it rides upwards through the Yukon Valley, also up into the especially lower Susitna Valley, and then into areas of the inner channels of the Panhandle. That would be Sunday morning. And then notice again aloft, we still have that ridge of high pressure extending over northwest Canada, with the ridge axis extending into the central inland interior here of Alaska. So we find the freezing levels bump upwards above 4,000 feet above the middle Yukon Valley, and still some areas above 6,000 feet as you get up here into the Northwest Territories, just southwest there of Great Slave Lake, and then off to the west the Aleutians, 6,000 foot. That's associated with a front that'll be pushing northeastward across the Aleutians as we go through Sunday into Monday. So the greatest threat for any icing, there could be a few pockets of moderate icing, along with this trough or weak cold front that'll be brushing through the eastern half of the North Slope and Arctic coast on Sunday, above 2,000 feet. And then remnant, we still have a moisture feed that's coming back toward Kodiak Island, the entrance of Cook Inlet. That will continue to diminish as we go through later this Saturday and into Sunday, but still could be some moderate icing above 6,000 feet where that feed of moisture and thicker cloud cover and some lingering showers or areas. A band of light rain still lingers. And then up here around St. Lawrence Island above 2,000 feet, and then back out here along the front through the lower middle Bering Sea above 3,000 feet. Here is the upper level wind field jet stream level, 30,000 feet, 300 millibars. There is this ridge that just remains over northwest Canada with an axis coming westward into the central mainland. And then we have back here to the west, I step out of the way, see a low circulation over the southwest Bering, impacting the western into the central Aleutians. As we drop it down to 700 millibars, 9,000 feet, pretty broad circulation. This thing is going to have a decent circulation. There's the hint of that little front pushing through the Arctic coast, and in the wake of it, winds turn more westerly along the Arctic coast, and then we have southwest flow coming out of the North Pacific into the lower Gulf, and still that ridge in the mid-levels, there's still a hint of that ridge lying along this axis. And as we drop down to 3,000 feet, the most notable few things to point out, we have in the North Pacific, southerly flow coming up just south of the Gulf, but not immediately going to have an influence. Lighter wind field from the Yukon Valley all the way into northwest Canada, again beneath the mid and upper level ridge axis. Little bit of a wind field here toward Kaktovik, turning west-northwest with the passage of that weak front. And then here's the broader circulation around the low pressure in through the western Aleutians, southwest portion of the Bering Sea. We do have some winds in excess of 45, 55 knots at 3,000 feet, pushing up into the central western Aleutians. As a result, we expect there is going to be some moderate turbulence in that region of the especially central Aleutian surface to 4,000 feet. And then also some stronger winds passing through the Bering Strait, both on the Seward Peninsula side and the eastern Russian coast, as well as the north side of St. Lawrence. We could see some isolated moderate turbulence on Sunday, surface to 3,000 feet.